Yesterday, on March 31st, 2025, Pierre Poilievre, who is the leader of the Canadian Conservative Party of Canada, made an announcement about energy corridors. So he thinks this is a really good idea, and I'll read you some of the press release. He said he'd create a, quote, national energy corridor to fast track approvals for transmission lines, railways, pipelines, and other critical infrastructure across Canada in a pre-approved transport corridor entirely within Canada, transporting our resources within Canada into the world while bypassing the United States. Now, I'm going to give you three good reasons, 3 points about economic and energy corridors, and then I'm going to introduce two risk factors that should be considered anytime we talk about energy. So bear with me. And this is important because the CPC is not the only party. The Liberals have endorsed an economic and energy corridor, and some of the other parties have made, alluded to this as well. And it's a popular idea around Canada, during the election campaign. So bear with me. But there is one thing I want to mention, and sticks in my craw a little bit, I have to tell you, is that after saying that the energy corridor would relate to transmission lines and railways and so on, he spent the rest of the press release talking only about oil and gas and only about pipelines. And then there was, a whole bunch of stuff about industrial carbon taxes and the Kill the Pipelines Act, Bill C-69, on and on and on. I mean, it was basically the Alberta agenda all over again. And the idea of a corridor is a very good one, but it's got to apply to a whole range of other sectors, both industrial and infrastructure, like the power sector. So that's a real weakness as far as I'm concerned right out of the gate. But now let's talk about the first point. And that is that there is a Canadian Northern Corridor project that's been undertaken for a number of years through the School of Public Policy at the University of Calgary. And there are literally dozens of research papers that have been done in various very technical aspects of what a corridor might look like and how it would be managed and run and all that kind of thing. So the point here is the wheel doesn't have to be reinvented. If this idea is going to fly, then policymakers should use this research and build upon it so that we can get it launched fairly quickly. You can find this information. We'll put the URL down on the screen, but it's www.canadiancorridor.ca. You can go there and learn. You can read to your heart's content about energy corridors and economic corridors. Number two, and the idea of an energy and economic corridor has to be part of a larger economic strategy. You just can't do this on its own. It has to be connected to larger strategic objectives and a plan. I mean, if we're going to have a corridor along which we transport goods and services, we're going to do it quickly, and this is going to be part of our plan to insulate ourselves from the United States, sort of disentangle the integration that's taken place between Canada and the United States over the last 50, 60 years. Very important, but needs to be part of a larger strategy. Now, today, April 1st, I did an interview with economist Tom Kemeny from the University of Toronto, the Munk Public School, School of Public Policy, where we talked about Mark Carney, Prime Minister Mark Carney, Liberal leader Mark Carney idea, because he's an economist, and he talked about the idea of using linkages, backward, forward technology. Go listen to our interview. Tom did a great job explaining all of that, some of the attractions, some of the limitations. So go there. But it's got to be part of this bigger strategy. And the third thing is that the corridor, what we build inside that corridor is very important. And for example, east-west electricity trade is really good. That's a great idea. We've done a lot of work on this at Energi Media. And here's the reason why. And let's take Western Canada as an example. So in British Columbia, you've got tremendous hydroelectric resources. Manitoba, the same kind of thing. In fact, I grew up in Manitoba. My dad worked for Manitoba Hydro. I worked for Manitoba Hydro back in the 70s. I've seen these hydro dams up close and personal, and they built a lot of them since then. So those two provinces have enormous hydroelectric resources. Hydro works really well with intermittent wind and solar. Here's why. When the wind is blowing and the sun is shining, that technology produces electricity at like a penny or two per kilowatt hour, sometimes nothing, literally the marginal cost of nothing. And but it doesn't, the wind obviously doesn't blow all the time. The sun doesn't always shine. So when the it can supply electricity into like a BC or Manitoba market and give them access to cheap, clean electricity. They then either all entirely or partially shut the generators down on the hydro dams, build water back up into their reservoirs so that when, say, the sun goes down, then you release that water and you generate electricity and you sell it back into Alberta and Saskatchewan, which have excellent wind and solar resources. It's the economics of this are great. Why don't we do it now? Is because all of our electricity trade, almost all of it in this country, goes north and south. So the idea of an east and west building transmission lines, interties between the provinces, making all of that work is enormously attractive. It's a great idea. Um, but there are some projects that maybe we need to take a harder look at. And one of them is Poilievre's favorite, which is pipelines. I can tell you that because I'm intimately involved in this debate in Alberta and outside of Alberta, that the pipeline advocates are not showing their math. This is 20 to 50, 30 to 50-year infrastructure. And you have to have it. It has to be profitable out for a considerable amount of time. There has to generate enough revenue to pay to clean it up if it becomes a stranded asset. This is no small thing. And in my opinion, the pipeline advocates have not made their case. Not to say that they couldn't, but they need to. They need to show their math because everybody's clear that when it comes to pipelines, public taxpayers' dollars will be needed to either partially de-risk the project, so private capital will come in, or more likely, because we have Trans Mountain expansion as an example, it'll have to be done entirely by government. TMX costs $34 billion. This is a lot of money. If we're going to build one or two pipelines, I mean, there's our, the money we're going to spend on energy. There's all sucked up in a couple of pipelines. Very important to get this right. Okay, we've already done a bunch of work. The Canadian Corridor Project at the University of Calgary needs to be part of a larger economic strategy. Go look at my interview with Tom Kemeny from today. And three, be careful about what types of infrastructure go in there. Don't just assume that all of them, whether it's pipelines, whatever it is, that it's economic. And so show your math. Now, two risk factors that have to go into the consideration of building an energy corridor and what you put in it. Number one, the energy transition. This is something we don't ever talk about in Canada. It is the focus of our journalism here at Energi Media. And I interview energy experts all over the world, all over the world. And outside of Canada, the energy transition is, when it comes to energy, is the dominant theme. And inside Canada, we never talk about it. So let me tell you this. The International Energy Agency is forecasting, it's modeling that by 2030, we'll have peak oil demand, and shortly afterwards, we're going to start seeing decline in oil demand. So if we're going to put an oil pipeline to the West Coast and think we're going to sell oil into Asia, wouldn't we want to worry about the fact that maybe our markets might not be there or they might decline shortly after the pipeline is built? That's a risk factor. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it could happen. And when you're allocating capital, spending capital, particularly the people's capital, you need to take into account risk factors. This is a big one. The second one, which is related, is climate policy. Now, it's all the rage that since Donald Trump became president a couple months ago and withdrew the U.S. from the Paris Agreement yet again, and now we see some governments pulling back on climate policy and on and on, that climate policy is somehow dead. Well, it's not the case. There still are many countries and regions that are strengthening their climate policy. Look at the European Union is going to have a carbon border adjustment mechanism in the near future where any good that's imported into the EU, they'll have an idea of what the emissions intensity is for that. And if you have a high emissions intensity, you pay a penalty based on a carbon price. And if you have a low emissions intensity or none, then you get an advantage. It's a premium product. So Climate policy and the energy transition, basically the displacement of oil and gas by electricity over time out to 2050, these are two major risk factors. When you add them up to the other issues, these need to be discussed. And, full marks for Pierre Poilievre. The idea is a good one, and energy and economic core. He says energy only, but let's expand it to economic corridor. It's a good one. But that doesn't mean that we don't have to put some thought into it, and we don't have to do our homework, and we don't have to bring our business case, and we don't have to show our math, because we have to do all of those.
Thanks for watching the show. We are on a mission to reach 10,000 subscribers and over 1 million views. If you're enjoying the content, give us a thumbs up, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for being part of our community.